Hi, Dan.
Hey, Dr. M, how you doing?
Jing Fan. Honestly, you are the first person from US who have been kind enough that I wake up in the morning and I say good morning to you. Invariably, is good morning in US and good night for me. I make my dinner and all my guests in US have their breakfast. And today is a role reversal.
No, it's good. It's in between Christmas and New Year's, and I've got a little time off this week, so I'm glad I can spend a little bit of time on one of my evenings with you this week.
Yeah, and so nice to have you. And I have been following or I have been getting your lean blessings for over a year now, and suddenly in the middle you vanished. And
Yeah, well, I got back with Xylem. It's interesting because we have at Xylem we have our internal. It's kind of like Facebook. It's actually run by Facebook. It's called Xylem Now, and so I do a lot of posts in our internal continuous improvement group, and so I lose focus a little bit on the LinkedIn side, but I got to get back and do some posting. That might be my New Year's
so
resolution.
that's the reason that I did. I posted, but I said, Dan Davis missing your lean blessings, right?
Yeah,
So
well, I'm still getting tagged. People tag me in a lot of stuff, and so it's always good. And when I get back on, I'm like, oh, I got tagged by this person. I'll check out and see what some of the good stuff. There's so much great content on LinkedIn these days, and being able to meet folks you never have the opportunity to meet. And so I always feel blessed to just meet some new folks and
yeah,
learn a lot. I mean, I've been a student of lean and continuous improvement for 22 years, and
yeah.
feel blessed.
So let's see all your adventures over there. So I'm sharing the screen with you, and let's see your adventures. There you are.
There I am.
Yeah, and that's the 8th episode of my series. And there is, I don't want to tell you the story, but if you can look at it, I have not said implementing continuous improvement, right? So you can implement continuous improvement the way you want to, but my question was, how do you support and sustain it? Okay, and I started this series September this year, and this is the 8th episode. So everybody knows you, Dan. Everybody knows, and you have been very generous to give all of us lean blessings. So, and you don't require introduction per se, but then you are my guest of honor, so I need to introduce you. There you are, Dan. I will have to introduce you to yourself, right? Vice President of Continuous Improvement in Xylem. You call it Xylem, right?
Xylem,
How do you
yep.
pronounce that?
It's Xylem.
Xylem?
Yep, Xylem.
Okay, what business are you into?
We are in the water space. So our mission is to solve the world's water problems and issues. So it's a great company, and we're doing some pretty amazing things for the world.
That would that include converting the saline water of the sea into drinking water?
I don't. We haven't got into that area of things, but there's a lot of seawater out there, so who knows? What the next piece is. We're primarily doing pumps to get water up into buildings, tall buildings. We do wastewater treatment area, and we work hard to service our customers.
That's a recycling part of it, right, sir?
Yeah.
And before you joined them, you were always into continuous improvement, right? I mean,
Long life of it. Yeah.
yeah, having graduated in industrial engineering, and then you went into tractor supply company first. There again, you were into continuous improvement, and then you went to Stanley Black and Decker. What were they into?
Stanley Black and Decker is an industrial company, so a lot of hand tools is their primary thing in the United States. So Stanley Black and Decker Stanley's got the kind of the wrenches and, kind of what you would see at a Home Depot or Lowe's. And the Black & Decker side of things was more the power drills and just the tool side of the business for them. But they have a lot of different spaces as well that they play in. Large company.
Right. And then you moved up to FMC technology.
Yeah, oil and gas. It was an interesting tenure as I worked in that space for a while and learned a little bit about the volatility. That's the word I'm looking for, of the oil and gas. So definitely an industry that's ripe for continuous improvement.
Okay, so right from tractors into industry, and suddenly the element of water came into your life, and you moved over to Watts water technology, right?
Yeah, I was in Watts Water for a while, and leading up their continuous improvement, and it's water, some passion of mine. Making sure that we're trying to make a sustainable universe, and it's a great industry to be in.
Yeah, right. And just check me out if I'm right. It is said that 90% of planet Earth is water, and it's all interconnected. Okay. A stream from Bombay is available in Pacific Ocean. Okay, they are interconnected. And so is it true in the human body. I think 70% is water in our body. Am I right? I mean, since you are the expert in water.
Yeah, I think it's up a little bit. I think it's 70. I forget what the exact statistic is, but majority of your body is made up of water.
Yeah, so there you are. You are into the right space.
Yeah, definitely. It's a fun industry to be in.
Great. So, we end this year, or we begin this year, not talking about lean. We're going to talk about fake lean, right?
Yeah, it was a topic. I remember it had to be almost 10 years ago. I was reading a blog. There was a person in the space. His name's Tom Curtis, and and I haven't seen a lot of Tom posting lately. I've tried to connect with him, but back in the day, he would put out some amazing material, and he had a slide on symptoms of fake lean, and I just thought it was amazing. As I was looking through, I'm like, yeah, and so it just inspired me to kind of tease it out a little bit more. And talk about it, because I think sometimes people hear the word fake and like, oh, what do you mean it's fake? And again, you could say it's symptoms, so it might not be fake, but I've been fascinated with continuous improvement and seeing signs of, and again, the symptoms of fake lean causes a lack of sustainability. When you start to see it come into play, I would see a lot of the sustainability not being able to hold because they're not truly practicing some of these things.
So Dan, I hand it over to you, and let's hear from you the symptoms of fake lean.
All right.
Okay. Well, so you're going to tell us 10 symptoms of fake lean, right?
Yeah. Let's dive into it.
Yeah. And I'm not going to ask you at this point of time, but what is running into my mind is who is responsible for the symptoms? Probably when we discuss it. Let's get on with your 10 symptoms of fake lean.
Yeah, let's dive into it. The first symptom that I see of fake lean is tools to use tools. When I do gimbal walks, one of the things that, when I walk through facilities, people will come up to me and say, yeah, Dan, we did 27 Kaizen events. We did a 3P over here. And I always say, great, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But did it solve your problem? And sometimes they'll say, yes, it solved my problem. And then I'll ask, is the team happy? and they may say, no, the team's not happy. Or, you can see out there, you can say, you did a bunch of Kaizen events in this area. How are things going? And the team members will typically, you can see it on their face if they're doing a good job or not. And I always ask the question, are your metrics improving? Typically answers are mixed. I see a lot of carcasses of failed Kaizen events, like, hey, what happened here? Oh, we had a 5S event. Oh, well, what happened? Well, nobody followed up on it. And so, one of the risks that I see corporations do is they use tools because a corporate assessment says that you should do tool usage. And I think it's a word of caution. You got to use the tools. You don't use a screwdriver to pound in a nail. You use a hammer to pound in a nail. And the reason you're using a hammer to put a nail in is because you got to hang a photo up. And so I think a lot of it is understanding what problem are you truly trying to solve, and how do we go and go after it. And so please don't use a tool for the sake of using a tool.
We need to talk about it a little more on tools to use tools. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's
so Sean Connery, excuse us, we would like to talk to each other.
Yeah. So what's your take on tools to use tools?
Now you're looking at it from the sorry, I said I will not talk about who, what, etc. Is that very often the way I experience it and the way I see it, I'm talking from the consultant's point of view, I'm talking from the lean practitioner's point of view, they specialize in a particular tool, right? And they think that that is universal when they go to a company. And they use that tool irrespective of whether that's appropriate or not appropriate, okay? And I'm a strong believer that fair enough, you have specialization in tools. Like I've been taught, and my sensei Masaki Imai, I know his teaching, he has been guiding me. However, I know where to tap for Six Sigma. It's not my area of specialization. I know there is variation. I know Six Sigma will help. So I don't have the specialization. So I tap into another source and I said, come, I have this problem and this is what the diagnosis say. There appears to be a variation. Why don't you take it over from here? Right? Yeah. So it's, and I mean, it has to be practiced. It has to be learned and practiced. It's not that you pick up a book in an airport saying 5S and you go and apply 5S, right? And some of this 5S expert, they come and say 5S is the first thing that you do. Fair enough. You have a house which says the foundation is 5S, okay? And you go and do 5S over there, and the client says that, look, all this I'm not paying for. Where's the bottom line? I don't get anything over here. And then I dig deeper and I ask them, oh, why do you do Ceton? Why did you do Seri first? Why did you Ceton after that? Why did you CISO after that? Why do you call it steps? No clue about it. And I said, look, Ceton is done to avoid repetitive Seri. Oh. I explained to you, what I'm trying to tell you is that you specialize in a tool and you think that the tool is applicable everywhere. Hoshin Kanri, well, do you have a purpose? And then you have a policy. There is a flow to get a policy first. So what's your take on that, Dan?
Yeah, it comes back to the business. It reminds me back, I don't know, it's got to be 20 years now. I went through probably the best distribution center I've ever been in my life. It had visual management, it had standard work, They had, they were unloading trucks in less than 20 minutes, 30 minutes, turning the dock doors. They had high automation. And it was beautiful. It was like the most leanest, meanest facility. That facility is not open today. You know why? Because it was a blockbuster movie distribution center. And so, obviously Netflix came and all the things came and that business went out. And so I think, purpose and strategy comes in, and, you've got to have a business, to improve on and make better. And so I think it starts with the core business of where you're trying to go and what you're trying to get done from a business perspective. And I think that's one of the mistakes as we're trying to apply tools. Why are we trying to apply tools? Well, we're trying to fix an issue and a problem and make things go a little bit smoother. And so, sometimes it's like, well, people get the mistakes that they want to go and they want to do like a 3P. Well, why do you want to do a 3P? Well, because I heard that it's a cool tool to do layout and design work. And I said, okay, cool. Are you doing a 2P or a 3P? If you're doing a 3P, you got to get the product design up at the front to come in, or you just, as the product design set in stone and you can't make any changes to it. And now you're just looking at how to do the preparation for the process. So again, I think it's just, people starting out get excited about tools and it's fun. It's like, oh, I did my first DOE. Yay. And so, and that's one of the things that I think people can fall into.
Yep. I told you about the customer's point of view. I mean, the consultant's point of view. I mean, I've been in this, frankly, after I started my business somewhere around in 2000, and they sent me 20 years work anniversary, etc. But I started somewhere around in 1991. That was when I got trained in Rolls-Royce. So that was way back 30 years ago. And I've seen this happening because my last posting was as a director of a pharmaceutical industry. And I've seen it happening from both sides of the world. Okay. So the organization, and I'm talking about myself and my organization, may not be universally applicable to other corporation, is that one of the organizations where I was a director, and here 98%, nearly 98% are all family owned, right? So the next generation goes to US, they go to Japan, and suddenly they said, you know what, this is all rubbish what you're doing called lean. TOC is what we need to do. So I had this organization where I worked, and the employees started laughing about it because it's called the flavor of the year. So New Year comes and you have 1 year, it is lean. The second year, you call it Kaizen. The third year, it is called TPM. The fourth year, it is called TOC. It all depends on the flavor of the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that's part of using tools to use tools, and
yeah.
People go in there. So that definitely is. Well, you ready for the second symptom of fake lean?
I mean, we have experienced all, so you can introduce me to the second.
Let's do the second one here. All right, appearance over substance is another one. This one, when I walk through a facility or go into a facility and hear like, when let's clean or let's 5S because fill in the blank is coming, and typically it's around a corporate. Patrick Adams just wrote a book, Avoiding the Continuous Appearance Trap, and he's got a plethora of examples of this, but it's not, I think part of this is not about it's about looking good versus being good, I think is the piece. And the picture here is a car without an engine. And I think that's a lot of the times of what happens of, man, this thing looks great, but you peel the onion back a little bit and you start to see that the substance isn't really there.
Yeah. I like the picture that you put. I mean, you have the frame, it looks very exotic, okay? And then dig deep into it, you don't find any components over there, right? That's excellent. I mean, yeah, that's what it drives around.
Well, and as you're doing your gimbal walk and you're walking in the facility and you see a great looking cell, and you start asking the team members about it, and they'll and they don't really know, and so you might have had 6 or 7 great engineers set up a cell and design it, but the team members aren't part of the system. They're just somebody that just came in and is putting parts together for the day, and they're not thinking about how do I make this better or what can I do to improve it. They're just working in an environment that may look good, and but we really want to make sure that we're using not only the folks there for their hands, but also their mind and their heart, because that's how you're going to continue to improve in there. So you got to be careful on stuff that looks too good, because it might be, until you really ask and start to ask some of those questions.
Yeah, have you come across organizations that are chasing awards without real substance? They just go get the award, but that does not ensure. Fair enough. You get through the audit, etc., etc., etc. You get the award. You can put it on your logo and said you're an awardee for this. You're an awardee for that. But that's like Miss Universe, right? That's a snapshot. I mean, check her out after 10 years.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the challenge, and we'll talk later on one of the symptoms of leadership, and I'll tell you more about my take on leadership and their impact on the continuous improvement. Any book you read, it says have leadership buy-in and or leadership support, and it's very vague of what does that really look like and how do they engage, and we'll talk a little bit more at the end of the conversation.
So the second point that you stressed on was lack of substance, right? It appears to be more of a show, half-hearted show, without getting deep into it. Is that what you implied by that?
Yeah, well, it's you can have engineered cells. I mean, when you look at lean and continuous improvement, they're the offshoots of industrial engineering and some of that work. Where you get more into the lean, it's about how do I get everybody involved and how do I get everybody thinking like, industrial engineer and fixing their problems. And so, when you have a pretty cell, you can have really nice boards, marketing can put some nice stuff up, and you can make it look pretty, you can shine it up and make it look good, but it's not a sustaining culture. It's not a one that people truly understand, and it's probably not going to get any better. It starts to deteriorate quickly. And I think that's where some of the companies have issues, is because they go in, they put focus on an area, and they might have 6 or 7 folks that work and make up the cell, and then the energy walks away, and then everything kind of goes back to the way it was if it doesn't have strong leaders. But there's a whole management system behind it as well that I think people forget, that kind of links it to make sure you have
Dan, since I'm studying Deming, that is a lovely 12 days course. They call it 12 days, but it's not 12 days. Okay, I've not even crossed the 3rd day from September. So it's composed by Henry Neave. And one of the things that while you were talking about it, and I was reading, I'm reading Deming a lot these days. So he says there's nothing called a Deming method. And he says that check why Deming said that. So one of the emphasis that he was trying to give, the best I know, I mean, I don't claim to know Deming as well as you all would know. I mean, I understand Deming to a certain extent. He said, make people understand why they're doing it. Let that go into that for problem solving. What to do is the easiest part. For why to do and making their mind works is probably what Deming was trying to tell us, because Deming doesn't have a method.
Yeah, it's I think one of the things that people fall into the trap is they overcomplicate things.
They overcomplicate?
And so overcomplicate things. So it's how do you simplify? How do you do less? I'm always looking at simple things. I was at the store looking to buy a faucet for my sink today, and they had all the displays up on the top, and I'm looking up at the top and seeing all the different things, and then the shelves down below. And so I look up and I see like an E13. And guess what? Down below, I see E13, after 12, 13, and there's the box of that. Made my life easy. It was great. Shout out to Home Depot if you're anybody from there looking. But it was nice. It was simple. And so I think a lot of what, Confucius said, life is simple. We insist on making it complicated.
True.
And I totally believe in that, like it's just the complexity comes into play there. And so I think we just got to continue to make things simple. And as things become simple, people can understand the purpose and the meaning and why they're trying to improve it, and, be able to do the work at hand in a more efficient manner.
So the first symptom that you told us today was tools for tools. The second one was it is no substance.
Yeah, appearance over substance.
Yeah. So Dan, you know what? I absorb it very well because I don't have a turf over here, unlike you. So
yeah.
So it goes directly. So I don't have to. I can absorb it very well without any interference of the turf. So let's go to the third one and discuss a little more.
All right, let's go on to the third. All right.
Yeah, that's. I've seen this query. Yep, it looks very familiar.
Yep, boards with stale information. Boards with stale information. It's frustrating when you walk by boards and see production control boards. I know this is just kind of information board, but a production control board that has no longer being used. I remember going through a tour a while back, and I looked at a board and I saw a date that was over 10 years old. I'm like, what's going on here? Why is this thing not updated? And no one knew why it was there. I always ask teams, if boards aren't being updated properly, for them to, one, either do root cause analysis of why isn't it being used, or two, take them down. Like, I think sometimes as leaders, they walk by stuff so many times and they just ignore it. And I'm like, if you're going to ignore it, it's better just to take it down and just, kind of say it didn't serve the purpose that it needed to do. And so, I think that's an issue that companies are afraid of, is they spend all this time and investment, they put up these boards, and then they don't have people truly using them or trying to do the root cause. I mean, it's a trap. It's a trap of capturing opportunities. If you have a production board, you're supposed to do 10 widgets and you did 9 widgets, what happened? Well, we ran out of parts. Great, ran out of parts. 2 hours later, supposed to have 10 widgets, got 9, ran out of parts. 3 hours later, 9 widgets, ran out of parts. Well, what's going on with parts? Let's get the materials manager over and find out what's going on. Now, if nobody walks by and sees parts missing, guess what? You're going to continue to miss your production day after day after day and not be able to do the root cause analysis to find out truly why it's going and go. And so, as you start putting these boards up, one, think about the system that you're going to have, of how you're going to manage it, who's going to walk by, who's going to take a look at it. Do you have leader standard work, and making sure that the leaders have time set aside in their day to look at the boards, and keep it simple. I think sometimes we get too crazy on boards, but then have history as well, so you can see trends. I think that's one of the things I've been seeing lately, is trends getting dropped off. They don't have the 3-month or 6-month trend to be able to see, how has production been over those six months or 5 months, and truly understand, what some of the issues are, because everything's kind of circling back. I think COVID's made a big impact on boards and stress and part shortages, and just the standard operating rhythms have just kind of gotten sideways a little bit, and getting back into updating your boards, making sure you have the right rhythm in place really becomes really important.
Yeah, this is true. Let me just, yeah, when I see these boards, and I remember decades ago, when I used to see these boards, we had incorporated what was called the DOR at the right down corner of the post. It's called date of removal. Okay, it was called DOR. Okay, so if the DOR is kept over there, and and then somebody passed by and said, look, the DOR, you're supposed to remove that. What happened? Right? So the DOR was, and that was put in red, right? So
Yep.
so that was on the board. However, what you are talking about is, even when you're talking about standard operation procedure, the versions that you have, version 1, version 2, version 3, you get updated on the shop floor, right? I mean, you talk about it, you do it, but we don't see that being revised or put as properly documented. I mean, you may have an, we call it ISO, or we got standards, etc., etc. We are supposed to put it up regularly, but these days what I find is that it's not because of COVID, it has become a habit. It's more to do with technology. They have soft copies of that, right? Of standard work instructions, a soft copy, invariably in the quality control department. They're supposed to be the custodian where the work is done at the Gamba by the operator. And can you imagine the operator coming and looking up? You may have the best digitalized system right on top of his on his machine, on his equipment, but he's not going to look at it if it is in a font over there, right? So, and then you don't even change the version on that.
Yeah. Well, it's, digital standard work is definitely a challenge. I think one of the things that people don't realize is the training. How do we train new people coming in, and the turnover? And it used to be people would work in one industry, one company 20 plus years. They wouldn't job hop. And now you're lucky to have somebody for a year or 2 years, and that's a really good employee.
Yeah.
And so being able to have having that information and everything readily available, and then training them, like when somebody comes in and here's our production control boards, here's what we use it for, here's what you need to do. The supervisor is going to come and talk to you about it. We want you to, tell us your problems and your issues and how do we fix it. And oh, by the way, here's your standard work. These are your work instructions. Since you're a new person, if you see something different, write down and let us know if something's changed. And so a lot of times that, to your point, that standard work doesn't get updated. It becomes stale. It's, outdated. And, but it takes work. I mean, it's work to update that. And where does that get on priority list to update it? And depending on how strong the culture is, depends on how much it gets updated and how quickly. And so it usually falls down lower in the priorities of, there's other things that come up that go into play. So it's part of that balance of putting your system in place, of making it priorities to have updated standard work, and making sure that people are building that out a little bit more.
Yeah, the first, what I get in mind is the first symptom, the second symptom, and the third are all interrelated.
Yeah, and we've got a few more that are. We got a few more that
I understand that you're going to tell me 7 more, but we need to look at the thread behind that governs this. It's sort of a mindset.
Yeah, it really does. It comes back to the culture, the leadership, the commitment, that the understanding that it's going to make things better, and so I think if things aren't going to make it easier, if things aren't going to make it better, people aren't going to take the time to go after it. I think a lot of times, if you don't have a good system in place, a new leader comes in play, and then they bring in their system and they change up everything. And we'll talk about that on the last one on the importance of leadership. So, and making sure you've got a system in place and teaching them and making sure that they can successfully do their job.
So the first we talked about tools for the sake of tools. The second we talked about the superficial part of it without substance. And the third we said we don't bother about revising. You put it as a board, but it is universally with the other things like standard operation procedures, etc. Yep, training without practice. That's right.
Yeah. So many times, people are putting people in classrooms. They're giving them 4 hours of training. They're putting them in, and they fall asleep. And the expectations of there's no real expectations of why they're going to the training. They check the box, and there's not a good way for hands-on, and so training without practice, especially in the realm of continuous improvement and lean, you got to go out, you've got to try it, you've got to fail fast, you've got to then learn from things and then try some different pieces and techniques. Now, if you've got a coach with you, failure is good in a sense that they're not going to let you fail too hard on that. But you actually got to go out and do it. I think that's the biggest mistake that people do. Hey, I got my master black belt. And I'm like, great, what project you do? Oh, I don't know. We just did it online. I got my certificate though. I'm all good. And I'm like, what do you mean you didn't do? And so, part of it is actually doing a project and learning the tools and learning what works. And, typically when people are going through their certification, I ask them, tell me three times you failed during this process, because I think in your failures, you learn more. I can tell you early in my career, my worst Kaizen event ever, I learned so much about things that I wouldn't do. And it was partly on that one. I was a new manager, had a CI leader underneath me, that reported up into my role, and I was like all excited because I had this person now reporting to me, and they went and worked. It was a HR led event. It was in the mailroom because HR is like wanting to do a mailroom improvement, and so we said, okay, we did the charter and had the event and said, okay, what do you want to do? Well, we want to shrink the mailroom in half because we want to use some space, and we want to reduce the travel time throughout the building to drop off mail. Check. And it turned into this nightmare of an event. Everything was textbook correct, like it was just check. But like day 2, the champion and executive sponsor didn't show up to the day 2 report out. And then day 3 is day of change. And at the end of the change, they came back and like, what's going on here? And they were upset, and there was a lot of emotions. And it was just, I'm like, never change, and I think that's coming up too, is, you've got to have good reasons to change, because people are going to react a little bit different when change is going in. So you just don't do an event. That was kind of a back to the use the tool to use the tool sort of thing, that the HR wanted to have an event because they thought it was cool. Again, it was another symptom of fake lean kind of creeping in a little bit. And it wasn't that we weren't trying. It just happened to be, an event that probably could have been a lot better. Learned a lot through it, and been able to apply, asking tougher questions on the front end and making sure that the change was really needed.
Yep, Dan, I have a query because you are promoting, or you are training people for black belt, Sigma, and whatever training that you do is people who are sent for training. I'm underlining the word sent. Okay, that somebody sent somebody for training, or you pick up somebody for training. Okay.
Yes.
The key is he himself doesn't know why he's getting trained.
Yeah, and I think there's different levels of training. So we're doing white belt training, which is an awareness training. It's a 30-minute training that we teach the 8 waste, value added versus non-value added, what continuous improvement is at Xylem, and how to do a point Kaizen or a quick improvement, and use the software that we've developed internally. And so again, it's focused training, and that's just an introduction basic for our 17,000 employees. And so it's setting that up, having some new hire introduction training, and then you go into a little bit more advanced, maybe a yellow belt or a practical problem solving.
Yeah,
And
I just wanted to ask you this, is because this is what I mean, I burnt my 10 toes, 8 fingers, and 2 thumbs in this, is that very often we don't communicate with these people whom we are bringing in for training. I'm sure you all will be doing it. I'm talking about my experience as to why. That's the reason that I said sent. Invariably, because that's a loss of a productive man on the shop floor, right? For the time of training. So I mean, people who are sent for training, and I'm putting sent, the reason is thrusted on them. That you go and get your white belt. I'm not talking about your organization, I'm talking about in general. That the practice after training and before training, the reason why he's getting trained, I think is significant, because that's where you get the buy-in for the training. He doesn't go to sleep if he knows that that is required, probably for his safety, probably for, I mean, the first thing that comes, irrespective of whether you call it this or that, is that what is in for me comes in first for any individual, including me. Okay, so is that significant as practice after training?
Yeah, definitely. You definitely need to know why you're going to the training and have that up front of this is the training, the what's in it for me. Absolutely. And but then you also need to apply it. I think hands-on,
Yes.
being able to go in and do it is the second piece. But I could definitely say training without practice and Dr. M's not being told what you're going there for is part B of a part B of number 4.
Sorry for that. I'm still under the intoxication of Deming, so I'm totally intoxicated. So if you will always see me that, have you told him why? Have you told him why? Have you told him why? Always occurs to me right now. I mean, that's the reason that I asked you. Right?
Yeah, you definitely people need to know why they're being trained, and you definitely want to go on more of the pull side for the more advanced training, that people need to be asking for that versus being pushed into it. There's awareness training, I think, that you can do a little bit more of a push because people don't know what they don't know, and so giving them a little bit, but you want to be mindful of the amount of time you spend on that, and knowing the attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. We're working on a lot of micro trainings that focuses on key points and doing multiple key points over multiple days versus longer periods of time for people.
Yeah, Dad, one thing that I like what you said about this practice after training is that the top management is providing the safety net for failures, right? They're giving you permission to fail.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really important that people feel safe. You got to create an environment, a safe environment where people can feel to fail, and like that they can do it in a safe way, that they can learn and practice, and just like going out and playing a sport and trying to you develop it and work it over time. You just got to practice. And
I was just waiting. I was just waiting when the basketball player of Dan comes in, right? So you can know how to dribble, how to go, and then without a practice, you won't know what to do with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you understand the game a little bit better. There's obviously a little skill that comes into play, that makes the difference between a superstar and somebody that just enjoys playing basketball. But I think as you continue to grow, it's you gotta go out and train, and practice to master that training.
Right. So we now move out to the next symptoms, right?
Complicated metric boards. Um, you know, I've noticed that a lot of boards become very complex, and a lot of times people want to automate the first thing. Like the first thing they say is, let's automate this, let's automate this, let's automate it. But you need to understand the data and the output. They say data is the output of the process. Understanding that, I was thinking of the what is it? The time is the shadow of motion, as it was one of those things. And so truly understanding the metrics and the processes around it gets better controls in place. Metric boards, they should be easy to read. You should be able to see them from 6 feet away at a glance. Use colors. Red, yellow, and green are great for most people. Get the reds bad, and greens means you're good. And then think of it from, I always said, if a guest came in or your mom came in, would she be able to understand what was going on? And those are some things to think about when making your production boards. Everyone should really understand why they're there, what the mission is, what actions you're taking. They should be used in Gemba walks and morning huddles, and have a great time around them. Make sure that they're effective. And I think that's a really important thing as you think about the metric boards as you move forward.
Yep. So, yep. I think that makes a lot of sense. This metric boards, sometimes they're just put for the sake of putting it over there, and which is not relevant to the particular cell. And
yeah, no, it definitely.
That is, I'm so sorry. You can't standardize a metric board and say, look, this is a standard. You have to have this across the cells. I don't think that's relevant, right? It is all appropriate to what that cell is. So.
Yeah, I've got mixed emotions on that. I think you need to make sure you have your purpose and your set of what you want to have in there. People need to understand it, and there needs to be a set of training to go with the boards. So once you have them set, you don't want them to switch out just because the leader switches out. And I've seen that happen in the past. Of a leader comes in, they want their boards, they switch it up, they change it. There should be a standard format that you have. It's kind of like the uniforms at private schools. You're going to wear a jacket, and you're going to have the white shirt, and there's a little bit of that that comes into play that can help maintain some of that. Because if you've got the standard, and you've got the board, and you've got this, regardless of your leader A or leader B, you got the uniform. And so I think that's, again, helping on some of the maintenance and sustainment of, again, how much is your leadership turnover. If you've got higher change of leadership, then I would probably be more in favor of putting a standard board in and say thou shall, just because the immaturity of the leadership not being able to handle it, versus if you have stable leadership and long tenure and somebody that's going to be there 10 years, then you can put more flexibility in.
So one of the questions that I ask when I see this is, you're putting up this standard, you're putting up this matrix for whom? You see where I'm coming from, Dan.
Yeah.
To interrupt you, that very often it is the leadership, the plant manager, the supervisor knows precisely what is happening on the shop floor, right? So does the operator know what is happening. Who doesn't know is the person who is further away from the camera. He's the guy who wants to know.
Yeah.
And but is that the objective of putting up metrics? Is it just for the leaders to come and see and what is happening in this thing, or it is for the shop floor, the frontliners to understand what is happening in the Gamba, or both?
It's all of the above. You know, you start with the cell, and the cell team needs to understand the metrics that are important to them. Because I always ask, like, how do you know if you had a good day today? Did you win or did you lose? I mean, you know, did you have a good day? And a lot of times they can't. They're like, I don't know, you know, I guess, you know, I had a good lunch, you know, and or, you know, no, I was supposed to get out 100 widgets today and we did 115 today. So we had a really good day that came out. Well, why'd you have 115? Well, Sally came on to our line for a little bit and helped out and made a big difference at lunch. And, you know, and you start to find out, okay, do we need to have Sally come in every lunch to get that 100 out? But we might find out that our customer demand only needs 100. And so we don't need Sally in there. And so, you know, understanding, you know, the tack of what we need to produce for the demands coming in. And so, you know, some of the output of what is needed, you know, maybe that cell needs to produce 100 today and it's normally producing 50. So we might need to staff up and put 4 people in them as opposed to 2 and lay out the cell in a certain way that all 4 of them can do the output. So it's all this, you know, goes back to my blockbuster. You know, it's all about the business. You know, we're talking tools and talking these methodologies. It's all about the business. It's all about the customer. It's all about taking care of them. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that they're happy and we're providing a good product.
Let me tap into your experience, because you have been there for decades now in continuous improvement processes, right?
Yeah.
And when they come and look at the metrics, what do you look at? The high rate of rejection or increase in productivity? You look at the negative side of it or the positive side of it?
Well,
I
so
don't know,
for me,
honestly. I mean, what is your, I know you don't like to prescribe that. I know you don't like to prescribe, but when a matrix is put and somebody comes over there and you have the frontline operators with you, you know, huddle meeting that you call them huddle meeting, and I can
yeah.
rugby, and I can understand where you're coming from, the huddle meeting part of it. You look at the good part of it, or you just go and say bang, 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 why is the rejection so high?
No, so the first thing I always talk about is safety. So, and that's really, really, really important, because if I go straight to productivity and say, why did you miss? Or, you know, why is your reject rate? Or, and you know, it's more of a discussion, you know, of, hey, help me understand what's going on that our X's and Y's down. But more importantly, it's going back to doing some positive behavior. Hey, good job. You guys have not had an accident in the cell for 600 days. Man, that's amazing. That's the best record that I've seen over all my gimbal walks and all the company. That's a record. How do you guys do it? You know, and so you want to do the positive reinforcement there, and then understand, like, you want, you know, when you come in, to be able to help them remove some of their issues. You know, why is this happening? If they look at you as somebody with a club and beating them up all the time, they're not going to say anything. They're not going to write anything on that board. They're not going to tell you anything. But if they look at you like as a supervisor, a leader, that, hey, I'm writing stuff down, they're taking pain away from me and they're making my life easier, and they're giving me solutions, and I'm coming up and we're brainstorming, we're having these discussions and dialogues that, hey, I need an extra XYZ, and they gave me X, Y, and Z. Man, that's awesome. You know what? I'm going to write more stuff down because it's going to make my job easier. And so I think the approach on that is the discussion. To your point, if you're beating everybody up, they're not going to give you anything.
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about symptoms of fake lean, right? And the symptom of fake lean is that you put a matrix and then you come over there and you still carry forward your telling culture and shouting culture, rather than saying that I'm here for you and getting in the listening culture, which I think, and which uh, you are very good at lean blessing, and the lean blessing is that I'm there to bless you and I'm providing the safety net. It's quite okay, but let's know the reason why the rejections, and tell me what I can do for you. And then you get in the concept of servant leaders or leading from the back, and you got a lot of jargons written on that. But that has to be practiced over there, and not that you put up a board and then you come and patch them up.
Well, you got to be a good person. And I hate to say that, like, lean's about being a good person, and it's tough in the world today. I mean, you don't see a lot of good news. I mean, you flip on
No,
the
but
news.
I don't. I'm sorry, Dan. I don't agree on the fact that you have to be no, respect for people. Doesn't mean that you have to be a good person. I mean, honestly, I mean, I'm just banking on me being a certified clinical psychologist in transaction analysis. Okay. What we say as a transaction, I'm just switching my hats, is that you can give positive strokes for doing, but you're permitted to give negative strokes for not doing. For doing, you can give positive strokes and negative strokes. However, you don't give negative strokes for being. You're a human being, you're 6'7". I'm not going to tell you, hey, Dan, I'm not going to call you Big Dan, okay? Okay, that is for being. But if you don't produce, if you have done something wrong, which is not appropriate. And in transaction analysis, we don't say right or wrong. We said what is appropriate or not appropriate. If it is not appropriate, it's absolutely okay, and respect for people to check, correct, and move forward so that he doesn't repeat it again.
No, I totally agree with you there. So I remember one of my first jobs out of college, I did engineering labor standards. And so I do time and motion studies, and we'd have a list, an assessment of the standards to be able to check to see how the standards were. And it was like a best practice checklist. And so you would go through and you would check off if they were following the standards to make sure that they were achieving the standard or not achieving the standard. At the end of it, there was 3 positives and 1 wish that we put on there. Even if they did like 27 things wrong in there, you would never tell them that they did 27 things wrong. You would figure out the 2 or 3 things that were the worst, that was meeting them up on the time. And you would say, hey, I need you to, when you wrapped that pallet, you went around it 47 times and the standard's only 10. And so you're not getting credit past 10. You're only getting credit for 10. So I really need you to work on that. So I think the positive and negative reinforcements need to happen. I think, being a good person, I think there's people out there that, just aren't nice, and that, and then I'm not saying from a coaching perspective, I just, I think there's people that just don't care. I don't think there's, that just want the paycheck and, just kind of work there. And so, and you're going to have that everywhere, and you just try to continue to work with them and be positive and be a good influence and say, hey, we're going to make life better for everybody around us.
I mean, we are trying to reinforce is that fake lean shows, but the behavior remains the same, as toxic as ever. So what's the next symptoms that you're going to tell me?
So we've got Kaizen without maintenance. There's the old saying, don't let perfect get in the way of better. One of my mentors would always say that. It's a lot of times you'll hear, and I put it up there, hey, we just did an event there, we're good there for a while. And so when I think of this, is when you do events, it's these incremental improvements. And even if you think you've got the best thing out there, you're going to need to maintain it, and you're going to need to watch it. I follow a method for my Kaizen events called the 3-1-3. So there's 3 weeks of prep, there's 1 week for the Kaizen event, and then there's 3 weeks of follow-up. And there's a checklist of things to do to follow up to make sure things came out. Plus, one of the things that I've noticed as well is when you're going in and doing processes, business changes faster than your processes. And so being able to have these multiple events and being able to have maintenance and constantly checking back and forth, this is my process still producing what my customer is expecting? Because business is changing so fast and our processes don't change as quickly. And that's why you do the events.
It's going to be faster, isn't it? With technological improvement, it is going to be much, much more. Your response time is going to be much faster. And this is totally disruptive.
And the flexibility and the agility is the key that you start to have when you start to do all these events, moving forward.
Yep. Incidentally, since I follow Sensei Masaki Imai, since we use the word Kaizen, it has been interpreted, la la la. But what Sensei Masaki Imai told me of Kaizen, that it is a small change that brings a big improvement. That's the way he defines Kaizen. And when somebody says it's a small improvement, I get Sensei Masaki Imai's face right on me. I can see him, and he tells me, Monsan, it is not small improvement. It's a small change that makes a big improvement. And then he said, you do SDCA, you'll see a fluctuation. Don't get worried about the fluctuation. Let it standardize. Then you do your PDCA. You get a fluctuation there. Don't get this thing. Gone. And he used the word continual improvement.
Continual, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what he taught me. Is that Kaizen is not a small improvement. It's a small change that gets you a big improvement. That's how Sensei Masaki Imai has told me. And I'm not selling that to you. I'm just telling you that's what he taught me. And that's what I believe.
Yeah, well, it's so true. It's so true. I mean, I think everybody, I love a good week-long Kaizen event. Don't get me wrong. There's some real power there. And if you need big change and you need quick change, but I think from your sustainability, as we're talking about sustainability, those are tougher to sustain unless you put a lot of maintenance in the back end and the front end. But if you put that in place with then a team that's engaged, that's in part of the cell, and they're empowered to make the small improvements each day on that cell, and they're given time. Now, the problem you run into is the lower in the organization that you go, the less discretionary time that they have to fix their issues. You're on a line, you need to make widgets. You got to make widgets. You got to make widgets. They don't have time to be like, hey, take some time and fix your process. And so, as you get up in the senior management, you got all the time that you want to fix and think and do different things.
So I'm sorry, because what Sensei had told me is you start with SDCA, the standardized do check and act, you do a PDCA, and then you allow that to stabilize. And that's how the sustenance comes in Kaizen. And then you do SDCA, and then you do you go on and go on, go on. Incidentally, I'm not getting into the C part of it because Deming said that, look, I never said C, I said S. And they said, I owe that to Short, and it is supposed to be PDSA. And who the hell made that PDCA? That's a different story. So let's get back into the symptoms of Kaizen. Right. You said Kaizen. That was the sixth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The six is unfollowed standard work. Now, we talked a little bit about this earlier on the standard work, and people always say, hey, Dan, what's standard work? I said, it's the safest, easiest, and fastest way to complete a task. Ono once said, without standards, there are no improvement. And so, people often confuse standard operating procedures with standard work. So you hear the word standard operating procedures, standard work, they're two different things. Standard work should include 3 different tasks. You should have your tack time, meaning how fast you need to produce to meet your customer demand. The work sequence order, so the orders of the operation, and then the standard work in process. So your inventory start and stop signals in there. If you don't have those, you don't have standard work. And so even worse, if you do have those and they're not being followed, it just makes things a little bit more muddy. It's key to train the employees, making sure that they truly understand what standard work is. During gimbal walks, check to see if those three things are there. Make sure it's alive, it's being updated. In transactional, I think this is where some of the terminology comes in. They're like, oh, we got standard work. Well, no, you've got standard operating procedures, unless you can show me the whip and, some of the other pieces of, maybe you have a self that does order processing or something like that. But
Dan, this is very significant. So I would like you to repeat the three elements of standard work and how is it different from standard operation procedure?
Yeah, so let me go back on those things. Let me go. The three things: one, tack time.
Yep.
Two, standard work sequence, which is the order of the operation. And three is the standard whip in process of where does inventory start and stop. Standard operating procedures is more your work sequence. So it kind of has the bulk of that. Doesn't always have what your standard work in progress is, and it never really talks about your customer demand and how fast you need to do those.
And so this is very significant. Follow the standard work, right?
Yeah, and there's different. You've got leader standard work. So you hear the term of leader standard work, which is more of your list of what a leader needs to do, and more importantly, what a leader is not supposed to do, because a lot of things get creeped into a day of what's essential and what's not. And so you hear the word leader standard work, and then you hear the word standard work, which we just talked on that, and you get standard operating procedures. And then you get into like the ISO, standard operating procedures, and the key is the cell area, in manufacturing of where it goes. Some people get hung up on it. When I get in transactional environment, people will say, I'm doing standard work, and I'll be like, these are your standard operating procedures. How do we make it more visual? I don't know if you've ever done the simulation where you tell everybody to draw a pig, and they draw a pig and you put it up on the wall and you say, congratulations, you all drew a pig. We've got standard operating procedures on how to draw a pig, and you hand them the sheet and it says draw a line, tangent, perpendicular, and all this, and you give them 30 seconds, and then they put it up on the wall and nothing looks like a pig. And then you give them the visual, what the pig's supposed to look like with the standard work or the standard operating procedure, and then they can do it in 15 seconds because they can trace it and do different pieces because it's visual. So a lot of the standard operating procedures should be visual, photos. I was a fast food restaurant the other day and was going through the drive-through, and I saw them making the food in the back, and they had big photos of the different steps of how to do the different work. But those are standard operating procedures. Again, it's not standard work because it didn't have the tack time and some of the other elements there.
And this standard work is also not standard, right? It has a continuous improvement element in that too.
It does. And it's, I think Toyota
and the fake clean does not believe in that, does it?
I'm
talking about the fake lean.
Yeah, no, it's unfollowed standard work. Now, if they find improvements, they would, you take the marker and you'd write on there and just take the sheet off and make the update to the standard work on there. So the question I always have is, when's the last time the standard work's been updated, to your point? Now, if the standard work hasn't been updated, in a while, then I would say that we haven't done breakthrough, and we haven't really been challenged in the process that much.
That's very significant. That's very significant. So one of the fake lean symptoms is not following the standard work and not updating the standard work, right?
And not updating the standard work. That is correct. So number 7.
You're on
is,
8. Oh, I missed my 7.
I'm sorry. Did I miss? I might have missed. I guess I've got 6. Yep. No. So that was 7. I had 2 missed. I got my error there. So 6 was.
I can check you out, and we can straight away make it 7.
Yeah, this is number 7. And
Dan, we change that to 7 right away.
Yep. Yeah, we can come back and change that to 7. So if we go back in there, let me get out of there. So that was number 7.
Hey, thanks a lot. We just revised the standard work.
I just updated my standard work.
We revised the standard work.
I just got my slide going.
Right.
All right. Number 8, visuals without meaning.
Yep.
It's,
oops. I need to take a look. Oh God. You're lovely. I mean, this is what I like about you. I mean, a couple of times that you have posted, and I should love all these. And this makes a lot of sense because it captures your eyes, and you can interpret that. Now that should clear up a few things around here. Yeah, sure. Where do you get all this
and
from?
it comes back, the question is can there be too much or bad visual management? The answer is actually yes, especially if it's done without intent and purpose.
Yeah,
I think those 2 words, intent and purpose, with visual management, just because you see it in an environment doesn't mean you can copy and paste. I think some people try to see something or oh, I saw this, visual management, and we want to put them here. And so, being able to make work transparent so that people understand what's going on becomes really, really important. And so I think, truly understanding why you need it, why the importance, why do we have this labeled? So I can see at a glance that something's missing, some of the shadow boards. I remember going by the shadow board, example, and there was always a tool missing. I'd always talk to the operator, and the operator, I'd say, why is that bolt, that wrench always there? He's like, because I need it right here, and I want to have it. And he was right next to his workplace. He's like, because then if I have to pick it up, because the rule was, if the tool's not in your hand, it needs to be on the board. And so it was just the rule. And he's like, I need this too much. And so when they did the analysis, they didn't take in consideration that tool needed to be there. I said, great. So let's go get some paint. And so we went and we painted up the shadow board. We covered up where that tool was, and we got some new paint. We painted it right next to where it needs to go. And now he was in compliance.
Makes a lot of sense. Very often, I have put some of the tools that are repeatedly used on the body of the equipment where it is safe. Yeah. So the Muri or the strain part of the operator is reduced. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Oh, I wish I can go back to the Gamba. I hope this virus goes off.
I know it's I just miss, what I miss? I miss the smell, the smell of a factory when you walk in.
Yeah.
And the people and the smiles and the, things moving. Yeah, it's definitely.
I miss it a lot. I miss it a lot. I mean, I enjoy the podcast, but then the Vodcast, such just in the P into V, that I really miss it. And then you get the smiles, and then you get a nod here and a nod there, and then suddenly your eyes goes to a drop of oil on the shop floor, and say, let's stop over there and say, hey, what's this? Okay, I miss it a lot. Honestly, I miss it a lot.
No, I do too. So the next the next one is change without culture. And there was a quote by
I like that. I like it.
there was a quote by Oscar Wilde that says, "It's always with the best intention that the worst work is done."
Yep.
And so a lot of times, and I think you'll appreciate this, is when you're making the change, make sure you have a system or a process to help the team get through the curve of the change. And I like to use Cotter's 8-step change process. And Cotter, talks about creating a sense of urgency, building guide and coalition, creating the vision and initiative, get the volunteer army, getting actions, removing barriers, generating short-term wins, sustaining acceleration, and then institute the change. That's a big model, and that's big change, but there's pieces and elements that you want to grab out of that to make sure that you get that change in place. But you got to have the culture to make sure that change gets in place.
Yep. True. Yep. Because there's been so many talk about culture. You read a lot of scaffolding there. You record a lot of support from there, and that squarely, I think, is leadership's. I strongly believe that the culture flows from the top.
Yeah. Well, and culture, the definition, one of my good friends always said, culture is what people do when no one's looking.
Yep.
And so it's how do you build the repetitive? From a culture standpoint, you've got to reinforce the important stuff, and you got to know what's important, and then you've got to say it 2 million times. Yep. And then you got to do it 2 million times, and people got to see people living, breathing. It's I hate to say the word cult-like, but there's that culture that comes with it from a business standpoint.
Since you are a sportsman, I'm not that you have been, I'm putting it in the present perfect tense of you are a athlete and you are into basketball, and I was, that is past perfect. So is that it becomes a muscle memory, right? Very often, it just becomes an instinct, a muscle memory. Like, for example, what you said, I think it's a lovely quote that you said. I think it's also is quoted somewhere in the Bible too, that I don't know whether it's talked about integrity or what it is. It says, do that when nobody's looking. Is when you see a red light, traffic light, and there's no traffic at all at night, and you instantly put the brakes on till the green light comes. For an athlete, and to us, we play a lot of cricket, right? So I used to kick wickets. And some of the catches, I myself didn't know how I took it behind the wickets, right? It's just instinct. You see the ball and the hand goes over there and the umpire says it's out. And then before you can even really realize that the ball is in your hand. It becomes, and that's where the practice comes probably. And it is a repetitive thing that builds in a culture or the muscle memory. Since we are athlete, I'm calling it muscle memory.
Yeah, no, it definitely, and it just takes time. Like culture, it takes a while to change. And, I think, leadership's important. The CEOs are very critical, but then it's just every leadership position in the organization becomes really, really important. And then having the right conversations and having, good developmental conversations. And, I'm gonna go back to, I know you're gonna slap my hand on that, but be a good person, but be able to coach and mentor when people are not doing the right behaviors that you want to make sure that they're following in line with what the mission and the values are for your organization.
Yeah, I like what you said about this culture. And here's something that I learned a long time ago. I belong to the ages of Peter Drucker, right? I met Peter Drucker. I heard him. Okay. And now they're accusing him of saying management by objective. That at that point of time it was appropriate. This point of time it is not. But don't talk about him right at that point of time. Okay, this is what I heard from him, not from him. And what it says is that where you matter, you belong. Okay, it says where you matter, you belong, and that's where I've said respect for people. That where you matter, you belong, and where you belong, you contribute.
Mhm.
Right? So that's
Yeah.
what I learned early in life, that where you matter, you belong, and where you belong, you contribute. Elsewhere, you only transact. That is called the punishment avoidance level of functioning. We call it PALOF those days, PALOF. So where you don't matter, you don't belong, and then you just transact so that you avoid punishment. That is the PALOF, punishment avoidance level of functioning. That is not continual improvement stuff.
No, that's I love it. I love it. You know, where you matter, you belong. I think just getting people to feel appreciated is really, I think, you know, topic along all companies. You know, employee engagement. How do you get better engagement? And you know, the economy and worker retention's all time low, and people are jumping jobs. And you know, it comes back to that quote there. You know, how do you make them?
Yeah,
You know, how
because
do you make them,
I don't know what's the time of recording. I don't care for that. I mean, I'm learning from it and I'm sharing it to the community. They want to listen to it, they listen to it. If they don't want to be interested, they don't listen to it. It's there on my podcast, right? So,
yeah, it could be.
so all what I'm saying is this is what we do to the kids, right? They matter to us and they
Yeah.
belong to the family. And it matters to us. We have every right to say that don't put your hand into the socket. That's negative, right?
Mhm.
Or you're going to say respect for people. I love you, darling. Do whatever you want. Is that right? That's scary. That's
Yeah.
matter. So where you matter, you belong. And where you belong, they contribute. They're open to you. They're transparent to you.
Mhm.
And that's my take on that. I'll leave it to you now.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, I think you definitely need some discipline and some coaching and the right way to approach it. And so I think, yeah, it's definitely um, making sure that they feel the sense of why the correction was there and where we need to be able to you know, where they fit in the whole picture, you know, of that. So
Right. So let's go to the symptoms
let's go to
again.
number, you ready to go to number 10, the last one. All right. So number 10, lack of leadership engagement. And so, you know, this one I put on because it kind of felt with the culture side of pieces. You know, one of the things that I always worry about is when I hear the term, what is the CI team? You know, the CI team owns the cultural change of continuous improvement. And, you know, go give it to the CI team. And, you know, when I think of a continuous improvement professional, people will say, hey, Dan, you know, what does a CI person do? And I said, number one, a continuous improvement person is a leader. They need to be the right hand person to the person in charge. And so as they report into them, they need to be the leader. They need to be the, you know, kind of a person that people respect and look up to. The second thing is they need to help own the improvement opportunity and being able to point out things that maybe others may not see because they've got more of a trained eye, and help coach and educate on that, which ties into the third thing, which is a CI leader needs to be a teacher. They need to be able to, you know, teach, educate, and continue to, you know, pass the message of continuous improvement on to the folks. And I think there's the sense that CI team is going to do the CI work and nobody else has to do it. And I think that's an old, you know, an old mindset. I mean, you think back 25 years ago and you would go open up the newspaper and look for jobs, you weren't going to see continuous improvement professionals. You're going to see industrial engineers, you're going to see manufacturing engineers, you're going to see, you know, the engineering trade. And now when you open it up and you search for industrial engineers, there's not as many industrial engineering traditional IE positions out there. They've all moved to this continuous improvement type role. And companies hire these continuous improvement people, treating them like industrial engineers to go out and fix my problems. And that's not the true sense of lean. It's really, how do I get everybody involved? How do I teach them to get there every day?
I am in total sync with you. And I'll tell you my experience, since we're sharing it, is at the end of the day, who gets the credit for continuous improvement? The continuous improvement group or the manufacturing frontliners or in any other field of Gemba?
It really depends on the company,
That
where
depends
you see
on
it.
leadership. That's exactly what you're talking about. The fake
Yeah.
leaders. I'm not calling them fake leaders.
Yeah, the
Symptoms.
leaders. Yeah.
Symptoms. Okay. I know when you have internal CI cells, right? External is different. We get kicked,
Yep.
right? We get kicked. Okay, and we get very badly kicked, right? And then they say that we don't show respect with it. That's different. But the internal cells, I've seen it happening. They go to the manufacturing. The CI, the thing now that you are holding a high position, right? You're a vice president. But in many organizations, they are youngsters who are just coming. Okay, they are lower in hierarchy. And they go to the operations where the manufacturing guy has been there for 2 decades. And then the youngster comes and says, this is lean, this is stack time, this is that, la 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 la. They say, okay, do whatever you want, but I'm going to do whatever I want, right? Now, the whole problem is the leadership who brought in this cell, the manufacturing guy says, I did the work, what did these guys do? But they get faster promotions. So, and that's the problem that we are going to have, because the millennium kids are going to look for faster growth.
Yeah.
And most of them have taken the shortcut to lean, Six Sigma.
Yep.
They're so IT savvy that you'll have more Six Sigma black belts. And I have to go there and solve their quality problems by using simple things. And as I tell them that I don't require a fire extinguisher to extinguish my cigarette, right? I know Six Sigma people hate me for that, for saying that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me. I mean, you look after the variation, I look after the others, right? Okay, that's fine. No quarrels. I'm talking about continuous improvement. Okay. My problem, therefore, is the leadership role. We're not talking about leadership role, building culture, etc., etc. I mean, all what I'm saying is the role of CI in an organization, a profession, as an internal or as a consultant. Shouldn't it be more of a catalytic part of it? Operating like a catalyst?
Absolutely.
Like a bridge between the leadership and the shop floor?
Yeah, that's that's the key, is that catalyst of creating the everybody always says, Dan, you must drink a ton of coffee in the morning, you're excited. I'm like, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I get to do what I love and teach people and educate them and go out and make things better for our customers. I'm like, I'm blessed, and that's why I get my lean blessings out there. So
yeah, but I'm sorry, there's something very funny that happened, is that one of the manufacturing guys asked this guy, there's an internal cell, and I was only just gone there to help these continuous improvement people to say, how do you go about implementing continuous improvement? That is much more important than you knowing the concept. And the manufacturing guy said that, look, please operate this machine and tell me, how do you do it? Okay. So he said, this is how you're supposed to do it. This is stack time, etc. I said, nonsense. Then he says, well, that guy was, this youngster was talking about single digit minute exchange of dice. You have to do it less than 10 minutes, single digit, right? He said, yeah, I put into CNC, the cycle time there is 2 hours. commissioning this component. This guy looks at all what I'm saying is the CI guy has to be more Gemba friendly, understand the Gemba first before they start prophesizing what they have read in the books.
Yeah, and they've got to ask questions and find out what kind of culture they're dealing with. And because a lot of times people get into a culture and they got to survive. It's just like, and you gotta like, and it's not always fun. I mean, I see it, peers and people will leave my organization and go to different organizations, and then they call me and like, what happened, and it's just I think for all the young engineers out there or CI professionals out there that are listening to this, one, just ask questions, ask a lot of questions and learn, and ask about culture, like who does the improvement, and what problem, this is something to write down, what problem are we trying to solve? What problem are we trying to solve? And how do we want to, and what are some of the acceptable methods that we can solve it with? And then you can start to get well, we want you to go out and fix it. Well, okay, that is a solution. And yes, you can go do that, but is that the culture that you're trying to do when it comes to lean and continuous improvement? And that's what it's all about.
So nice, and that's great. So can you just quickly run over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, a quick slide. So
yeah, let me hang on one second. Let me pull that back.
You finished the 10 symptoms.
I did finish that up. Hang on one second. All right. So number 1, tools to use the tools.
Yep. Appearance over substance, right?
Yep.
Board with stale information. Perfect. Training without practice. Love it. Complicated matrix board. Sure. Yes, sir. Kaizen without maintenance. Unfollowed standard work. Visuals without meaning. Change without culture. And finally, lack of leadership engagement. Great. Thanks a lot, Dan. I'm not stopping recording because I have the last slide for you.
Okay.
Okay, so let me get the last slide. In. Where are you? Yep. There you are. And Happy New Year to you. And as I have been always receiving lean blessings from you. And today, let me give you the lean blessings and pray for you. And for this wonderful mission that you have, Xylem CI mission, very significant to me. Everyday people solving everyday problems through passionate mindset of continuous improvement. And that's when we talked about it, this is what you said the mission was. So I said, this should be the last slide in our episode 8 today. And all this would lead the company towards best-in-class status in operation and transactional activities. That's what we discussed, and that's what I put. Thank you very much.
Dr. M, thank you so much for having me on your video cast here today. I'm blessed to be able to work for a great company that has the vision to really engage all 17,000 of our employees to make our ultimate goal of solving the world's water challenges. And hopefully the folks that watch this was able to take a few nuggets away from this and make their journey a little bit better as well.
I'm sure you'll do it. All the best for the new year. Happy New Year to you and all your loved ones. Okay. Take
Happy New Year.
And enjoy yourself and make other people enjoy themselves. Joy for work at your place. And I'm going to stop recording. Thanks a lot.